After the horrendous Crown update, they released the experimental servers, where it's basically a public test for updates on the actual public test. Sounds weird, but stay with me here. It's kind of a nice way for people to test out updates because not only it keeps the community occupied, the community is a little bit more crazy than actual testers when it comes to experimenting items. Anyways, enough with that random ass intro. Let's actually get into what this experiment is about. So the experiment itself is testing new loadout concepts. What I mean by that is that they are moving spears and staffs to chest plates, which means that shields are going to be the only thing you'll be using until Slime Prince. And nearly all passives will have barely stat upsides, but unique and different passives. But why though? Well, if it isn't obvious enough, it is to add variety in your builds, since you'd usually only use like a couple items for their stats, but now you want to use them for their passives. So maybe when you're endgame, you might want to make a bleed build with gold anklets or something, which is something that I really support. So that begs the question, what does the early experimental phase look like? Well, if we ignore the staffs and spears being turned to chest plates, we have over 3 new items and 4 new passives. The reason why it's not that much is because, as said earlier, this is the first experimental patch to come out, and anything beyond the Forest of Stone is not added yet. I mean, at least they have Harma Wolves instead of Prince Slime Portal to add playtime. Anyways, let's just get into the items. Starting with gold anklets. The new passive is that you have a 15% chance to apply bleed, which I can see this being very good with high orb classes, specifically melee because it's bleed, with kunai or destroyer. Next item is the parrying dagger. The new passive is that once you get hit, you'll get a yellow outline, and the next attack you do does 10% extra damage. Not a very good passive right now, but maybe might get uses with the more passives being added later on. Next item is a Slime Sigil Mighty. The new passive is that once you hit your super gauge, you'll apply bleed to the enemy for 5 seconds. It's a pretty basic passive, but still a passive nonetheless. Also, the Slime Sigils keep their stats because of the experimental progression. The stat changes of these items might be, changed later on, but they're staying the same right now, or else progression will just be kinda S. Next item is a Slime Sigil Conjurer. The new passive is that once you hit your super gauge, you'll smite down a magic beam dealing 65% of your magic stat. This is definitely way better than the Mighty Sigil, and that's probably because of the game's progression not offering you that many spells. This might get tweaked a bit on full release. Now we're on to the new passives. The Spiritual's Flame passive is that every 5 seconds it takes 15% of your magic and damage stat and turns it into a small burst of damage. Right now it's not that good, but once you have more armor items and skill points, it becomes very strong. It's not strong right now since the game's progression doesn't go past Forest of Stone. Next item is the Limit Breaker, and this passive item makes me a little worried of what other passives can be in the future, but what this passive does is that once you hit your 5th damage orb, it'll take some of your magic and damage stat, combine that into one Railgunner-esque beam with a 1.40 times damage multiplier. Not only it sounds broken, it is broken. I mean, I'll just let the footage play out for itself. I mean, what is this shit? Why? But yeah, that's pretty much everything significant in the experiment mode, patch, or whatever. I actually really like what they're trying to do with the game and make passives feel like passives instead of basic stat increasers like in every other critical adventure type game. I genuinely cannot wait for what they have in store in these updates with items and all that. And yeah, this is the end of the video, and we'll see you fellers next time. Goodbye.